Our ability to feel is what makes being human so uniquely wonderful, complex, and challenging. Because if being with our feelings, sitting with them, were easy, then being human would be far less complicated. I can't tell you what to do with your emotions, your feelings, but in this episode, I hope to offer valuable insight and perspective that can help you feel more comfortable and accepting of all those emotions you want to numb, distract, ignore, and all those feelings you're tempted to exercise, shop, and eat your way through. I believe that processing a feeling is about learning to observe it with curious compassion and kindness. And it's about developing a willingness to accept that the part of us that feels a certain way, well, it needs to feel what it needs to feel without judging that part of us, without judging that feeling. I teach clients to open their hearts to the idea of accepting that the part of us that feels guilty, ashamed, vulnerable doesn't make us less worthy. It isn't a lesser part of us. The part of us that feels wise isn't necessarily more valuable than the part of us that feels confused. And the part of us that feels generous and kind isn't more deserving than the part of us that feels jealous or envious. It's not about trying to get rid of certain parts of us, getting rid of certain feelings, and keeping others. Because if there's something that life and my work have taught me, is that every emotion, even the most uncomfortable ones like fear, loneliness, sadness, shame, guilt, they all have something valuable to teach us. They all serve a purpose. And when we learn to explore the parts of us that feel the way they feel from a greater level of consciousness and emotional awareness, we can start moving towards a greater sense of wholeness and peace. I don't think that there's any one feeling, any one emotion that is better than another. I try and stay mindful of the bias that makes me want to think that when I'm feeling centered, feeling in balance, I'm somehow more good enough than when I'm feeling out of balance. These are just different experiences on the journey that we call being human. Without imbalance, how would we know what it feels like to experience a greater sense of balance? I believe that for every part of us, for every feeling, there exists an opposite. We can feel generous or not generous. We can feel kind or not kind. We can feel calm or not calm. We can feel good enough or feel not good enough, and so on. Although we might be tempted to see these as negative and positive sides of us, when I view them from a higher emotional awareness, I realize that these opposite ends of the spectrum are the shadow and the light, and they both serve an important purpose. Feeling out of balance is what motivates us to seek out its opposite, to seek out greater balance. It is the shadow that drives us to move towards the light. When we can observe the part of us that is feeling not kind, feeling not loving, and notice how these feelings feel in our heart, in our body, gently, kindly, without judgment. This wise observation can motivate us to move towards greater kindness and love. I think that it's learning to work with these opposing halves within us in greater harmony, with greater mindfulness, that can bring us valuable learning. Because remember, without the shadow, how would we know when we're standing in the light? I think it's a good thing to keep pushing our emotional potential by cultivating greater mindfulness and reminding ourselves that in the kingdom of choice, when we're feeling impatient, feeling more patient is only one thought, one choice away. When we forget to feel grateful, feeling grateful is only one thought, one choice away. Feeling greater empathy and compassion is only one thought, one choice away. When we feel less than loving, feeling more loving is only one thought, one choice away. But I believe that regardless of how we feel at any moment and how that can cause us to behave, we can choose to grow a deeper awareness in us that fosters a wise understanding and urges us to feel more forgiving of ourselves and to take any regret we may feel afterwards and use it to feed a resolve to be more mindful of all the emotional choices that we make. I think that when we're afraid of being with our feelings, we can feel less than whole. So moving towards greater wholeness is about making peace with all our feelings, with the parts of us that may be feeling conflicting emotions. Creating greater wellness is about learning to experience what we're feeling in a more productive way. We tend to label our feelings as good feelings and bad feelings, but I prefer to refer to them as good feelings and not so good feelings. The thing is, how can we get to know ourselves, figure ourselves out, if we hide from our not so good feelings? If we avoid or repress the part of us that's experiencing that feeling? If there's a part of us that is feeling lonely or angry, and that loneliness or anger gets swept under the rug, it gets mindlessly distracted, judged, then that part of us that is feeling that way is denied its freedom of expression. Anger serves a purpose. It can motivate us to make things fair. Loneliness also serves a purpose. It can motivate us to find human connection. And if we suppress the parts of us that feel this way, then we may just be denying them an opportunity to do that. I believe that experiencing our feelings from a greater level of consciousness is about allowing every not so good feeling to be heard, to be listened to with the ear of our heart, with wise compassion and, yes, even love. The part of us that feels the way it feels just wants to be acknowledged. And when we ignore or avoid this part, it can be left feeling neglected, even abandoned if we don't learn to come to the rescue and offer it a little love. When we numb or distract ourselves from feeling unloved or feeling not good enough, then the part of us that feels this way goes without love, the very thing it needs most. It's precisely when we're feeling sad, scared, adrift, hurt, ashamed, that we most need to offer that part of us a little love. Because when we can embrace the part of us that feels scared or sad, well, no love is more healing or soothing than our own. I believe that when the part of us that feels shame or blame or regret or resentment or frustration is greeted with love, well, that love, which is the highest vibrational frequency there is, can help to comfort, soothe all of those feelings. I think that making it safe for ourselves to feel however we feel is about learning to wrap that feeling in unconditional love and show that part of us that feels that way a little compassion. Say that we're sorry that someone made us feel insecure and we feel jealous, or sorry that someone made us feel hurt or ashamed or neglected. When, as Jane Austen liked to say, our feelings prey upon us, we can choose to make it safe for ourselves to feel whatever we feel, free of judgment. We can choose not to shame the part of ourselves that feels ashamed. We can choose not to criticize the part of ourselves that feels less than good enough, and blame the part of ourselves that already carries so much blame. When we're able to do this, we can ease and release some of our emotional burdens. I think that when we can learn to observe those feelings of guilt or shame or unworthiness with loving kindness without judgment, then we may just discover that these feelings don't bite. They can't wound us if we choose to make the space inside of ourselves safe, if we give ourselves permission to feel whatever we feel without hating or punishing the part of us that feels this way. Feelings like self-loathing and shame can feel punishing because we do withhold our love. But when we make the decision to love ourselves fiercely, no matter what we're feeling, then, the power of this love, its strength, can help us to give up that feeling of self-hatred or shame or guilt or unworthiness. And this can bring us tremendous wellness. So what happens when a feeling knows that it's being observed? Well, it's like noticing that our attention is on the part of us that feels a certain way. And this is a good thing. The moment that you notice that you're scared of feeling scared, well, that very observation can give you the opportunity to enter into a dialogue with that fear, to begin to explore it with wise compassion. And it's this very thing that can keep us from losing ourselves in that sensation, in that emotion of fear. Sitting with my feelings is literally about sitting with my anxiousness or my irritation, listening to it with the ear of my heart so that we can start a productive conversation And it's this conversation that can keep me from losing my perspective. A feeling is not always what it seems. This is what I've learned from personal experience and from my work with clients. When we find the courage to look underneath a not so good feeling, we may just be surprised to discover a positive intention. When we learn to observe any feeling and ask it a curious question, what is it that you really want to get from me? We may just find out that a feeling like resentment, envy, insecurity, meanness, frustration can have a greater purpose. It can have something good to teach us. So if you'd like to start a conversation and explore a not so good feeling, what you can do is to just find a place where you won't be disturbed. Be in the quiet. Take some nice mindful breaths. Close your eyes. Connect with the wise observer in you. And observe where you're feeling this particular sensation, this feeling in your body, and ask it a few curious questions. What is it that you're trying to do for me? How is it that you're serving me? What do you need from me? If you could speak, what would you say? How can I use you to make me stronger, to make me wiser? And if the feeling feels punishing to you, ask it. Is it really your intention to hurt me, or is it something else? The answer to these questions can yield valuable knowledge and wisdom that can help us to observe any not so good feeling in a better light. Sometimes I think of our body as this emotional revolving door that has a knack for getting stuck on those not so good feelings. Now, we tend to perceive this as a bad thing, but what if we changed our perception and opened our minds to the possibility that it's precisely these feelings that can motivate us to change and grow? When we feel stuck emotionally, we can use this as an opportunity to learn how to express and release any emotion, any feeling in a healthy way. If we do the maintenance and allow our feelings and emotions to flow in and out of our body, we keep that emotional revolving door working properly. When we can learn how to process any not so good feeling, to acknowledge, honor, and then release it, we make more room in our body for what we do want to experience. I believe that learning to explore the world inside of us is about learning to sit with our feelings in wise awareness, making an effort to understand their higher purpose, holding on to that learning, and then giving ourselves permission to let that feeling go. And this is important because emotions, feelings can outlive their usefulness. They can outlive their purpose. Anger, for example, can have motivated us to set boundaries, to do what we needed to do at a particular moment in our life. But this doesn't mean we need to carry that anger with us for the rest of our life. If we don't choose to let go of emotions like hatred and anger, then time may not be able to heal what needs to be healed, what needs to be set free. I like to say that daily drops of impatience can become buckets of anger. Emotions, feelings are energy. Energy that can accumulate in our body and become stored, stuck in our organs. And if we don't learn to release the energy of these not so good feelings, then it can become stagnant and grow. Fear, for example, can motivate us to find ways to stay safe. But if we don't learn to let some of that fear go, then it can accumulate. And there's only so much fear our body can store. There's only so much shame and blame and guilt and anger that our body can comfortably hold. And if we're not mindful to release some of that overflow, that energy, it can start manifesting in physical ways. This is why it's so important to surrender the weight of those thoughts that just make our feelings feel like such heavy burdens. I like to remind clients that holding on, refusing to let go of grudges, mistakes, failures, painful memories of past events, and the way these make us feel can keep us from figuring out the purpose they served, can keep us from learning what these have to teach us. Refusing to let them go can keep us stuck, imprisoned in these not so good feelings and make us reluctant to embrace our present moment, our future without them. So wisdom and wellness can happen when we learn to let them go. I Googled how long it takes for an emotion to pass, and it turns out it takes less than 90 seconds for the chemicals of an emotion to leave our body. So why is it then that those not so good feelings seem to last for so much longer than that? Dr. Joe Dispenza likes to say that emotions are energy in motion, and I couldn't agree more. I think that those not so good feelings are meant to flow in and out of us like our breath, and learning to move that depleting, heavy energy of feelings like fear and unworthiness is essential to cultivating wellness. So this begs the question, for how long do we allow the part of us that feels a certain way, to express itself? For how long do we allow the part of us that is feeling, let's just say, resentful to feel resentful? Well, the answer is a choice that can keep us stuck, feeding and clinging to that resentment, or that can set us free from it. Learning to ask ourselves the question, when am I going to let this feeling go, helps us to stay mindful about setting a time frame, about being mindful if we're sensing any resistance to doing that, and mindful about exploring why we're avoiding doing the very thing that can make us feel lighter and better. Why is it that it's so important to learn how to let go of these not so good emotions? Well, when clients are experiencing a challenging time doing just that, I like to remind them that, emotions influence our health. They play a role in determining what genes in our body are being expressed. Books like The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton and The Genie in Your Genes by Dawson Church talk about this. Bruce Lipton has an amazing talk about epigenetics on YouTube, where he discusses how the signals in our internal environment, namely our thoughts, our feelings, are determining our physical health to a great degree. You know, even though our body at a cellular level is constantly being renewed, we don't always feel it. And I wonder if it isn't because we keep holding on to those thoughts that keep us holding on to those feelings like blame or hatred that may just keep us from feeling regenerated and renewed along with ourselves. Emotions sometimes come out of nowhere, but more often than not, they follow a thought. So focusing, staying mindful about those thoughts that just keep us from letting go of these not so good feelings. Learning to work with these thoughts, to process these feelings can go a long way towards improving the environmental signals that can affect our health. If you decide to release an emotion, a feeling, you can use the power of intention and the power of imagery to do that. So for example, you'd like to let go of, an intense emotion like anger. What you can do is set an intention simply by thinking to yourself, I choose to let go of some of this anger or all of this anger. That's up to you. And then using imagery to do that. So, for example, what works for some of my clients is vividly imagining a volcano that's erupting, and that lava represents that anger that's pouring out, flowing out from the crown of their head. When you make this experience real in your mind, your body can feel so much lighter, can feel that relief and that freedom from finally being able to let go of that heavy energy and move it out of your body. If you've only got a few minutes, what you can do is use your breath to release any feeling. You can imagine that there are exit points in your body. These can be your throat or your belly button, the soles of your feet, your heart. And as you slowly and mindfully breathe out, just imagine that this feeling is leaving your body through any of these exit points. Or if you have more time, something that I love to do is just imagine that you're walking in a beautiful forest or along a gorgeous beach, and that you have with you a sturdy backpack. And that as you're walking along, you're noticing these rocks of different shapes, sizes, colors. And each rock seems to represent a feeling that's weighing you down. Now, as you continue walking, carefully choose what rocks you want to put in your backpack. And when you filled this backpack, imagine that there's a mountain or a hill in front of you, and experience climbing it and feeling the weight of that backpack, of all those feelings that are burdening you. And the heavier this load, the more resolve, the more determined you're going to feel to finally be rid of it. When you reach the top, you're going to imagine that you're looking out to the sea. Set that intention to just get, to release all those feelings. And then just experience taking that backpack and hurling it out into the sea and just watching as it hits the water and those powerful waves take it with them. And feel the lightness, that relief in your mind, your body, your heart, how good they feel to finally be rid of all those feelings. I like to think of all my feelings as my children, because in a sense, I do give birth to them. So some I may like more than others, some are more bossy, dominant than others, some cause me more emotional discomfort and worry than others, but viewing them in this way helps me to accept and love them all. Now, usually there's one feeling that likes to rule the emotional roost, that likes to hog up our emotional space. In my case, it's fear. And it's usually not keen on sharing, on allowing those parts of me that want to play and laugh and shine feel that they can do that. So as the parent, I have to tell that anxiousness to move over and make room for a little calm, a little lightheartedness, a little confidence. When we're in the throes of that familiar feeling that just wants to take over our emotional space, what we can do is to ask a question. Well, how do I want to feel instead? Because when you do this, you mindfully offer other feelings the opportunity to express themselves. And we can do this using the power of our perception, of our imagination. There's a great technique that's used in hypnosis and cognitive behavioral therapy that was developed by Calvert Stein called the clenched fist. I've tweaked it to help clients let go of that feeling and welcome whatever it is that they want to feel instead. So if you'd like to try this exercise, what you can do is close your eyes and get a sense for where you're feeling this feeling. And then imagine allowing it to drain down your shoulders and arm and into the palm of your non-dominant hand. This would be your right hand if you're left-handed. And then you're going to imagine closing your fist around this energy, scooping up all that feeling, and then holding it there in your fist. And then you're going to open your eyes, set the intention to let it go, and what you're going to do is take a nice slow out breath. And as you do, open your palm, relax your hand completely, give it a good shake, release that feeling, and feel how nice it was to let it go. Whenever you're ready, you can start squeezing your dominant hand. And as you do, set the intention to bring up that feeling that you do want to feel. So let's say you released a little sadness and you'd like to feel more gladness. Then what you can do is invite into your heart some happy memories. Anything that's going to help you experience a shade of happiness, a little love, appreciation, gratitude. And then you can imagine closing your fist around this positive feeling. And that, as you squeeze, you have a tight grip on this feeling. And then whenever you're ready, you can relax your hand and bring it to your heart. Or if what you released is hopelessness and you'd like to feel more hopeful, you can invite into your body a feeling of faith. And you can connect with a part of you that is greater than you, that is more powerful than your hopelessness. And you can give yourself permission to feel hopeful. Scoop it up into your dominant hand, and as you squeeze, imagine that you're really feeling it, allowing it to revive you. And then whenever you want, just relax your hand. After you do this, you may just notice an improvement. I know that many of my clients tell me that it feels as though that old feeling was neutralized, as though its negative charge lost its power. Basically, when we do this exercise, what we're doing is using our non-dominant hand to release that not so good feeling, and our dominant hand to ground us in that good feeling. You can use a variation of this exercise to establish a feel-good anchor that you can use every day. So every time you notice that you're in a light-hearted, good-humored frame of mind, you observe that you're feeling wise, empowered, calm, generous, kind, compassionate, forgiving, joyful, relieved, you're going to squeeze your dominant hand. Don't let any moment, however brief, go by without squeezing your hand every time you notice that positive feeling. Do it all the time, every day. The more you do it, the better. Look for excuses to do it. And after a while, if you repeat this enough, it can become a conditioned response, a powerful resource that you can use. So when you do need a burst of feel-good energy, you can squeeze your dominant hand and feel the difference. I think that what I've been trying to convey in this episode can best be summarized by the great poet Rumi in his profoundly wise poem, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, a momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, greet them laughingly at the door and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. If only we could learn to perceive all our feelings and emotions as guides, how much easier it would be to treat them with respectful curiosity and embrace them in peaceful acceptance. I often think that it's those challenging emotions that can become our greatest guides if we just take the time to sit with them and listen with the ear of our heart and understand the part of us that feels the way that it feels. I believe that being human isn't about winning over those not so good feelings. It isn't about avoiding the emotional discomfort that unhappiness, unworthiness, or fear can bring. It's about, as Rumi so wisely says, inviting these guides into our hearts with the intention of honoring their visit. And I also think It's about understanding that while they may visit our heart, that doesn't mean they have to live there. I think it's so important to remember that processing, learning to be with a not so good feeling the moment that it arises, isn't about feeding it with self-talk and thoughts that are just going to grow and intensify it. It's simply about giving it the space to be heard, to unburden itself, accepting its message and wisdom, and then saying goodbye so that we can invite into our heart more of what we do want to feel. I think that when we can learn to be the wise observer of all our emotions, our feelings, it is we and not them that become the masters of our life. Perhaps the whole point of life is to feel all those feelings that make us feel like we're floundering, and then feel powerful the moment we can turn it around and feel a little less like we're floundering and a lot more like we're flourishing. I believe that if we can become the intrepid explorers of the world inside us, then we can discover the part of us that I call the wise observer, that is more emotionally intelligent than we are, and that is capable of observing all our feelings, even the darkest of them, through a prism of light. When we can observe a feeling and learn to study it in the light and not in the dark, then we can perceive any negative feeling in a more insightful and positive way. Individually, we may feel like there's not a lot we can do about restoring world peace, but we have the power to do so much to restore peace and acceptance in the world inside of us. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this episode. As always, it's been my intention to share some insights and tools that can help you bring greater wholeness to all those parts of you that feel the way that they feel. And if there's a part of you that feels like it could use a little help learning to sit with all your feelings, then I encourage you to find a trusted therapist, a psychologist that can help you sort through and make sense of them and let them go so that you can live your best life. If you have any questions or comments, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you.